Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Victoria. Let's bring Victoria in. There she is. Victoria was her name. And we'll see, can we get Victoria name here? And it's spelled Victoria. Victoria. Victoria asked her mom why the water was so clear that she was playing in. And she was playing in the North Slope of Alaska, and oh boy, that's the way it looked on a picture. But she wasn't playing in that water. She was playing in a stream around her house. This water in the North Slope was cold, very cold, but it was clear. Victoria's mom explained that it was because water is made up of tiny particles called molecules. And here comes the molecules. They are pretty big. We're going to, at least on this picture, but these molecules are what water is made up of. Little particles in the water that make up the molecules. COLES, molecules. Cold water. And there's Victoria. So she was playing in the water, not in the North Slope, but the water was made up of molecules. And these particles are also small, so small that they do not reflect light. So if light shone through them, they didn't reflect it. And you could see that the sun was trying to shine through the molecules. But the water was clear, so the sun was not able to reflect the light, and anything that was in the water looked clear, so you could see it clearly through the water. Victoria was amazed. She had never heard of such tiny particles as these before. It was just something very new to her. She wanted to learn more about these particles. So she decided that she was going to go to the library. We'll make it pretty big. And we're going to take Victoria. We'll make her a little smaller. And let's take her to the library. So she's going to go from her home to the library. At the library, Victoria found a big book, a very big book. about the ocean. It was a big book, and she could read in that book about the ocean. And that was very delightful. OCEAN, ocean. So, in her big book, she read about the ocean. She also read about some amazing creatures that was in the ocean. One she was very familiar with, and that was the whale. She knew a lot about whales. Her mother had helped deal with whales to feed the village. So she was very familiar with the idea of whales. But there were other animals too she was familiar with. She was familiar with seals. She was familiar with fish, particularly salmon fish. But this was not a salmon fish. This was just a regular fish. But she was familiar with it. And she, of course, was familiar with seals. And she also was familiar, at least she had heard the word, dolphins. She was familiar with them too. So she was learning a lot at the library. She also was amazed at all the creatures that lived in the sea. She was very much impressed that they lived there and they were so colorful. She also learned about different types of water. The first water she learned about was lakes. And lakes come in all colors. And she knew a little bit about lakes because there were plenty of lakes in the North Slope. She also learned about the seas. There was plenty water in the North Slope, particularly in the Chukchi Sea. This was the Chukchi Sea, and we put the sea up here, and she learned a lot about lakes, streams, and she also learned about rivers. Rivers. Rivers flowed, actually, rivers flowed through the North Slope, particularly in different parts of the North Slope. The more Victoria read, the more she realized how important water really was for all living things. even though it began as molecules and it had the sun shining through it, she learned that it was the habitat, the place where all these animals lived. It was the source of life for all living things, including people, including us. It helped keep the planet cool and provided a home for all creatures, at least most who lived in the water. Victoria was so happy. She had asked her mom about the water and why it was clear. She had learned so much in her small amount of time. She had learned, one, that water had particles, and those particles were molecules. And she also learned that all life needed water. And she learned that we needed to conserve, for number 4, that we needed to conserve water. And that's exactly what she was going to do. She had learned so much and was even more grateful for all the wonderful things that water provided. From that day on, she made sure she made sure that she would always conserve water and take care of our planet. The end.